everyone, welcome back. Today we'll be talking about the evolution of languages. The purpose of languages is to facilitate communication or transmit both scientific and cultural information easily. However, almost every nation contains distinct language elements, making it impossible for two people speaking different languages to understand each other. So you might be curious, why is this the case? In this video, we'll explain the evolution of human communication from its very start to the end. Get seated as we are starting. Traveling back to the ancient eras, Homo erectus was the first species to develop a primary means of communication similar to sign language almost 1.8 million years ago. Verbal communication did not appear in this period due to a lack of specific sets of genes related to basic speech production in the DNA of Homo erectus and their inappropriate skull structure.
Then mankind engaged in its first verbal communication 430,000 years ago with the Neanderthals, as proven by research. One of the researchers rendered models of the Neanderthal ear. Examining the drum, canal, and bones, research proved that the Neanderthals had a similar frequency bandwidth to us today. This meant that the Neanderthals could perceive our modern speech. The second research examined the structure of the Neanderthal skull. According to this research, the Neanderthal skull was more arched than a modern ape skull, though not as arched as a Homo sapiens skull. This proves Neanderthals' high speaking capability. However, they still could not make all the noise Homo sapiens could make. Finally, the third research found FOXP2 genes in the Neanderthal genes. FOXP2 genes are necessary for producing a protein called forked box PT. This protein is essential since it ensures basic speech development in early childhood. All this research proves that the first verbal communication was in the period of the Neanderthals. Yet Neanderthals still could not speak like modern humans do today, since their hominid vocal tracts were not as developed as modern humans. It took us 330,000 more years to pronounce more complex sounds for further communication. Even with this extent of evolution, Neanderthals started the culture of verbal communication within humans, setting the base for future languages. 360,000 years later, Homo sapiens started to increase their vocal skills, creating formalized languages. First languages were under the influence of their surroundings. This led to cultural exchanges between different communities to form newer languages. Now we can move on to the ancient linguistic developments. In 3400 BC, the Sumerians invented writing in its true sense, starting the period of written languages. They recorded their innovations, wars, religious events, and cultures in writing. 1,300 years later, the Phoenicians created the first alphabet with 22 letters. Then they spread the language into the Mediterranean, Maghreb, and Greece. The Greeks and Carthaginians developed their languages inspired by the Semitic alphabet. Afterward, they influenced Italy, inspiring the Latin alphabet in Italy 700 years later. Spreading into most of Europe, Latin became the lingua franca of the continent. However, in China, linguistics followed a different track. The first Chinese characters date back to 2000 BC. 750 years later, the first Chinese alphabet spread among the locals. Due to its nature as a language based on signs instead of sounds, unlike Latin, Chinese became unrecognizable to Europeans. While Latin had a basic alphabet filled with several unique letters to learn and create words from, Chinese was based on picture forms, and each character would describe a word if used in the correct order. With 40,000 characters, the Chinese seem overcomplicated compared to Europeans, as they're not used to the picture-based writing system. Similarly, Latin feels too voice-based for the Chinese, as it's not visual but vocal. Another separate language is from America, where Olmec writing was widespread. Olmec writing dates back to 900 BC, later than the Chinese and Latin alphabets. However, it had unique ways as an iconographic language. It did not use calligraphy in contrast to the Chinese alphabet, since most symbols were replicas of the 3D object in a 2D form and did not have fancy techniques.
To conclude, the reason behind different languages is their dependency on natural and cultural factors. Proof for this theory is that languages used in countries famous for their agricultural or livestock activities usually have a more extensive vocabulary list to define animals and plants. For example, Arabic languages have a remarkably vast list of words for desert animals, while most languages don't. Similarly, uniquely descriptive corn symbols have been seen in past Olmec's writings. These symbols were justified by the fact that back then corn was only grown in the Americas and became a cultural symbol of that region. And this is the end of our video. Thanks for watching, and if you want to learn more about social and scientific topics, you can visit our website or listen to our podcast on Spotify. Stay tuned for the next video, and as always, it was Hevsel Times.